Welcome to Tech Tuesday. My name is Abbie Ritchie. I am the founder of Senior Savvy, and you can find me here every Tuesday interviewing people who are involved in senior living. Today, we've got two amazing guests. I'm super excited to have them on. But before we get started, let me run the intro. I heard a meow back there. Was that yours, Kelly?
Yes, unfortunately. Sorry, everyone.
Right, that's totally okay. I've got a doggy here myself, and so you know what it's like when you're working from home. You have all of those wonderful experiences of being at home. Well, I want to go ahead and introduce my guests to you. We have Sara and Kelly from LE3, and I want to welcome them. First, let me say hello to Dr. Sara Kyle. Hello, Dr. Sara. Thank you for joining us today. And if you have not been introduced to Sara before, she is known as a community engagement geek. I love that. She's very passionate about strategic consulting for technology and program design. And she's a driver of industry collaborations, as well as a boy mom of two.
Boy mom of two, yes.
Boy mom of two. Okay, I've got one of those stinkers. I have one pink and one blue. So I kind of know what that's like. Welcome to Tech Tuesday, Sara.
Thank you.
Welcome. And then we also have Kelly Stranburg. Kelly is the strategic consultant for senior housing and aging services. She's an engagement and well-being expert, an educator, speaker, writer. She is, as you probably know, a self-care advocate, right? We always have self-care Fridays on LinkedIn. That's right. We all need much of that, as well as a pet lover, dog lover, right? You're also often featured with your doggy, right?
I have 3 dogs and 3 cats, one of which said hello, everyone, on Tech Tuesday.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and any minute now, one of them might just hop up on your desk and walk around, right, and make an appearance.
Oh, Abbie probably just jinxed us now, Sara, because Buttons
is coming.
Yep.
We joke that she's kind of our
mascot.
She appears all the time.
Often.
Well, gals, I'm super excited that you're here, and we're going to talk about Evolve, about the upcoming Evolve conference. And, you know, we're also going to talk about why we're talking about that now in September when it's not till the summer. And there have been multiple Evolve conferences with Foresight Productions over the years, and boy, has it evolved, right?
Yes.
Could you take me, I want you to take me back to the first one, but would you also, before we do that, introduce your company and what LE3 Solutions does?
Absolutely. Sara, take it away.
Favorite ones.
Rock, paper, scissors.
There you go.
Oh, LE3 Solutions, it's Kelly and I. We are just a 2-person strategic consulting firm around all things what we're calling community engagement, looking beyond just senior living and what goes into aging services in that ecosystem. And we sit uniquely between owner-operator groups and management companies, working with them in the communities and their organizations to really streamline, put together some strategic planning, annual plans around what that is of the daily resident experience and community experience. But then we also work with vendors and solutions around all things that are trying to create something that will aid older people, however they may live and where they age. So not just tech, but ultimately what's coming into the space, a lot is tech. But we do a lot of things that are not tech-based or SaaS models as well.
Yeah, I've noticed over the past couple of years, there's been a real push towards, thinking outside the activity calendar as it's known, right? Thinking outside that. And so I'm hoping to hear a little bit about that. And also now let's talk about why Evolve started and how it has evolved over the past couple of years.
Absolutely. I think the first year we did the Evolve event through Senior Living Foresight, it was really to bring additional, sorry, y'all, I got a cat who's not happy with me. It was really to bring resources and tools to the litany of different types of programming professionals in our collective space, because we were still in the middle of the pandemic. And we had recognized that because of the pandemic, just how critical resident engagement and how residents choose to spend their day really is. Sara and I have been talking about that for 10 to 12 years, but we really saw it rise to the surface during the pandemic. And so that was the catalyst for Evolve the first year, was what kind of resources and tools can we push out to these professionals while they're in the midst of operating so differently. But then with that came this opportunity to really highlight how critical this role is in communities and what kind of education do they need, not just tools and resources. And so Steve was such a great voice in our space to say, this role is critical. It needs more time, more attention, more dollars. It's a hard lesson or message to hear for a lot of operators. So we said, let's try and figure out, how do we bring the best content possible forward to continue to grow and elevate these individuals as professionals, but also bring a lot more respect to this position in communities. Sara, what would you add to that?
I think, trying to thoughtfully curate content and putting it in a meaningful way. And as we continue to evolve, what we talked about, hearing feedback, what is most pressing? What are the biggest needs and challenges? And who are those people that can speak to that? And I think what we found in this last year is wanting to, while we can talk about this in silos, you get a bunch of engagement people together. And sometimes you don't move the bar as much as you want, and it becomes more conversational rather than, I would say, advocacy or really moving that needle. So can we get these executives in? Can we get the people who are investing dollars? Can we get developers and try to hear from their side of the story? What we find is that we're having to build this bridge of why it's important and why dollars are needed there, and what does that return look like, and what should we be searching for if we're still in this quandary of not having the really hard metrics to show success. And that's where we're at this place, but we are trending upward. And I think we're having a much bigger voice and concerted effort.
Yeah, because we all know, based on the metrics, and then this is no surprise to anyone, but we all know that there's a direct correlation, right, between high occupancy rates, resident engagement, and high satisfaction rates with employees, right? We all know that, and that it goes straight across the board there. So with that in mind, are you seeing a lot of people adopt to growing their resident engagement activities and their department?
I think what we're seeing more of now is really looking at the community as a whole, and how do programs and services and the amenities on site impact everybody in whatever ecospheres of individuals lives and then works in those communities. And so that's a lot of what Sara and I talk about. Is it's so much bigger than this activity or programming calendar. And again, that only impacts residents, really, other than the staff who have roles in facilitating those offerings. And that in order to make sure all of those things are high, like you mentioned, Abbie, occupancy, staff satisfaction, you have to really start with staff first. Because if staff, and this is Sara's line all the time, if staff love coming to work, your residents are well cared for, engaged. It goes together. And the fact that for a really long time, we've kind of siloed out residents and staff and prospects and family, there's no reason for it. We should have this singular approach based on who you are as a community or who you are as an enterprise organization, and how does it impact everybody under that roof. And so when we start to deliver things in a much more holistic approach, I use that word cautiously, it starts to serve everybody, and we get positive outcomes for all of those key stakeholders. And then that filters to that bottom line that makes investors happy. And so you really have to start with this culture in your community and strive to have this community of engagement as a whole, and not solely only focusing on residents.
I'm so glad that you said that, because it's so easy to compartmentalize all these different departments, and yet this might be one area in which it all comes together and correlates beautifully. I want to know, what is your vision for this year's conference?
We have a couple. Kelly, I'll start with one, and then I'll let you you'll take whatever I don't say. I know. When we were talking the other day, it's how do we, not this one and done. We don't want people to show up for 4 days, be involved, go in chat rooms, kind of get excited, and then we break for a year and we come back. But we want to build a community. Mm-hmm. We want to build kind of this resource, this advocacy group. We want to bring people alongside of us, and a peer network, but not just a peer network for engagement. We don't just want engagement professionals and activity professionals. That probably is one of our biggest hopes, I think is the right word, of how do you attract a larger audience, because we need those people to hear what's going on. So to me, it's building this community. It's a collective.
Yeah. So, and let me just say that one of the reasons why we're talking about this so far in advance is because we don't want it to just be happening one time a year, but to happen throughout the year, and for there to be an awareness, right? Yeah. Yes. So let me do this right now. Let me go ahead and take a quick break, and I want to run a promo for one of our sponsors. Thank you. And so I also want to talk about the sponsorship of Evolve, as well as why we should get everyone involved now, including executive directors, life enrichment directors. Why should they attend?
I think the biggest reason to attend is, and it's exactly what Sara was saying, how do we continue to build upon this momentum of creating these communities of engagement for all? Mm-hmm. And there has to be more than the professionals who facilitate programming. We need the C-suite executives. We need community leaders. We need the vendors and solution in our space. We need everybody hearing just how critical this part of the business is. I think we can all agree that once, if required, clinical care is delivered, how a resident spends their day is directly in alignment with their overall quality of life and well-being. Mm-hmm. And so it goes beyond passive activities. It goes beyond that idea of let's keep the residents busy or entertained. It's what are we putting out there for the residents and staff to engage in that really helps drive their satisfaction for living somewhere, for working somewhere. And there are a lot of advocates across our space who believe in this, but there's also a lot of people who just haven't maybe been exposed to this idea, and maybe aren't even aware of how do we get started. And so I think it's critical to have all these different lens and all these different attendees so we can grow as an industry. Because in no way do we ever want to silo out programming professionals and say, all right, we're all going to make this charge. It has to be a collective to really change the space. And we need a lot of different voices weighing in. We need support from clinical folks and sales and marketing folks and dining folks and facilities folks and IT folks, and then the solutions, because otherwise we're actually not elevating the space. We're just chunking it off and going rogue. And so it needs to be this collective to really embrace how do we go about fostering these communities in a different way.
And one thing I want to say to that is, when you think about this program and why people need to attend, one's a budget constraint. We need to plan for this. If you are an organization of 100 communities, we don't just want you sending your corporate director of engagement, right? We want the people doing the work at the communities to feel like they are valued, that they can put this in their budget. They can spend whatever, $150 for 4 days of education and support and morale. But we have to budget for it, and we know that. So that's why we're talking about this now. The other part is, this isn't about this isn't a programming conference. This isn't send your people and they're going to get 500 ideas and they're going to come back and they're going to make a new calendar and you're going to be like, awesome, you learned so much. Our calendar looks great. Now we have more people participating. That's not what this is about. And so we want to make sure that it's not an in-service day. Right? When I think of like a teacher, and it's not an in-service day. This is teaching leadership to these professionals. It's teaching them about the business. It's teaching them the bottom line and how every move in or move out affects that bottom line, how occupancy, they're drivers of occupancy. Bring them along in the business conversation that is senior housing, because a lot of times they're not privy to that, and they're not privy to the financials and the impact that they can have. So there's so many reasons, but we need every voice in the leadership to tell them this, right? Hearing it from other programming people, it starts to become a resounding gong, right? Because we're the cheerleaders behind it. So they want to hear from you. They want to hear from the executives.
And so is that the mission behind this year's event, is to bring more people along, bring more people into the fold, to make engagement more of a regular conversation, and also elevate the engaged life director?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
And I think the more that we can espouse through the Evolve events and leading up to Evolve, like Sara said, it's bringing these people, these professionals along and growing their own knowledge base just from a business standpoint, that then this part of the business in our industry starts to be seen very differently. Sara and I always share in conferences and with different operators and vendors, there's a business case for every department in senior living, except programming. And there is a business case. Programming professionals see the impact that they make on the residents every single day. Now, are there hard black and white metrics that go with that? Not necessarily. But are you making a difference in their life? You are. And I think that's the piece that gets complicated and it sits in the gray area. And that's what we continue to try and build out, is the business case for this part of our space, so that it is valued as much as the sales and marketing approach. It's valued as much as whatever your culinary program might be. And it's valued just as much as amazing clinical care. It cannot be a nice to have, and it can't continue to be, we'll put it on the bottom, and if margins get tight, see you later engagement, because it's the first thing that will upset residents and families.
And I just have to say this. We know this is something we need. And there's some great groups out there, and we are fully supportive. But if you look at an Argentum, and you look at a NIC, and you look at a Lead Engage national conferences, and you look at any of the sessions or support for engagement, it's not there. There's not the discussion around it. And so we've got to get it to that level. And we know we have work to do to get it there. right? We have to prove our case. And the more people, it's this little army we want. The more people we have saying, I'm going to start thinking differently about what I do each day. And I'm going to start seeing my budget as more than just something that I can go spend on a month, month to month to buy resources to support the activities that I have going on for the day, right? Thinking strategically about what is the best use of dollars? What is the biggest return for what I'm doing? Is it entertainment, right? Or things we've always done. And so we have to elevate the conversation on our end first to get it to a point where it can sit at those national level conferences and have the same, I think, receipt and validity to it. Receipt sounds like I bought something.
Or that you're on a housewives reunion.
Yeah, I do think that is so important. The awareness. Is that what LE3 Solutions does when you're consulting with communities privately?
Yeah, it's an array. Everyone's coming into this at some different journey. The end goal is to see an elevated offering, to see the community engagement on a different level than we ever have seen. Where people are at is all very different. But the journey to get there is pretty similar. And Kelly can attest to this. I mean, Kelly was brought in to do this. People want to change it overnight. They're in a month. It doesn't work.
It doesn't work like that. It's funny. It's been 7 years since I was hired specifically to come in and do that exact role. And I talk about it all the time. Poor Sara's heard most stories about my leading a change in culture and even talked about it this morning, and the power of just getting staff to connect and relate on a personal level outside of work impacts how you interact and deliver services inside work. And I'm always shocked how often I refer back to those 4 years of my career. And it's a small blip in my career, but it's really impacted me. And I get to experience firsthand, like, what it takes to drive this.
Yeah.
I made plenty of mistakes. I'm a champion at failing forward, y'all. So, I mean, it is a process, but there is a roadmap that operators can follow to really create this amazing environment that is everybody. That's the favorite part, is to see how staff and residents start to really become one. And I think that was the idea all along behind communal living in our space. It was not to silo out departments and have residents be holed up in rooms or anything like that. It was really to become this amazing community under a single roof, wherever that you choose to do that.
And I think that telltale sign when you talk about where operators at, if you do not have an annual approach or plan for what you're going to do for engagement in 2023, if you don't know what technology or resources you're using to support that, if you haven't looked at seasonality in your budget, if you haven't looked at, there's so many things, but if there's not that same annual plan that you focused on and goals that you have with sales and marketing or with dining or with operations, then that's when you have to say it's not going to change, right? It can improve, but it will not become that culture of what you're seeking, where it is profoundly changing what it feels like to walk inside a community.
Yes. And that's why, we're talking about this now. That's why we're starting this discussion now in September, as opposed to next summer, as we get closer to the event, because I really feel like this is an ongoing discussion, and this is going to be an evolution of engaged life. And it doesn't just happen overnight. And it really and truly happens from the top down, right? As long as we can speak with the executive directors and get their buy-in and get them to help everyone else come around the vision, I think we are one step closer to having this type of cohesiveness at communities.
I agree.
Yeah.
We heard this in the dining segment last year, of just hearing how the two different verticals start to operate differently,
Mm-hmm.
you take away nuggets of, okay, how do I work better with my staff? What are the idiosyncrasies that we know of creative people from a dining perspective and creative people from a programming perspective, right? They're both wanting to be in control. And when you tell the other one what to do, it doesn't work out so well, right? Talking about sales and marketing, if you just, how does that conversation go with how do we partner? We say, it's such a collaborative effort, and we have to partner with the other verticals in our communities if we want to push this needle forward and meet the needs of our future consumer.
Yeah.
And tell an accurate story, right? So there's so much relationship building that needs to happen within the walls on the leadership teams of communities.
There really is. And I appreciate all of these comments that are coming through. That's awesome. You guys have a lot of fans. You've made some really big impact in the Engage Life director. And so we want to, you guys have come really far. What have you learned from some of the past Evolve conferences that you want to take forward into this year's?
Ooh, that's a good question, Abbie. I especially enjoyed and appreciated last year. Sara had the honor of moderating a discussion with,
Ron and Scott.
Scott from Ziegler, and Ron is a senior living executive in our space. And what I found most profound was their appreciation from an operation standpoint and an investment standpoint on, they know how critical it is to create these cultures that are desired by our consumers, and that it's not done by a single person. It's not done by this calendar, and that it takes many moving parts and everybody coming together to collaborate. And I think that's immensely powerful. Even last month, Sara and I were at a conference. I ended up in an elevator with a gentleman who works for a lender in our space. And I told him what we do. And he said, is every single person at this conference dying to talk to you guys? I was like, thank you, sir, for being so kind. But no, but that's where we need to get. But it was so eye-opening and heartwarming at the same time to hear me describe what Sara and I focus on and are passionate about. And that here's somebody from the lender side saying, everybody must want to talk to you, because that is where the space needs to go. And it is going. It's just, how do we get there? I don't think there's anybody in our collective industry that doesn't want what we are talking about. I think it's the how is really probably the most challenging part, because of the other things that we are confronted with right now. We have staffing concerns. We can all agree on that. We're still working on occupancy. We have infrastructure issues that we want to, remedy, so that all of the amazing tech solutions that Sara and I work with, Abbie, you work with and focus on, that they work brilliantly in these spaces and they become true tools of support for staff and tools of engagement for residents. And so there's a lot of priorities in our space right now. I do think this is up there, but we got to get staffing under control. And then I think this can follow in its footsteps as a high priority. I'd make it a top 3.
Yeah, absolutely. And Sara, how about for you? What will you be taking from some of the previous year events and bringing that forward to this year's conference?
So the first year we did it, it was 4 days, and we put content in. It wasn't not strategically, but we just put it as kind of a hodgepodge, mixing sessions up day by day. I think last year when we did it, we tried to have more concentrations for that day. I think people feel like they can't take time away, or they feel guilty for taking time away, which I would say, before you will ever be great at your job, you have to invest in yourself. And you promise the residents will be fine. You go away on the weekend and everything's fine, right? And so not having that guilt to invest in yourself, but also you don't have to look at it as, oh my gosh, how am I going to do these 4 days and take this time here and here? But this is a collective library that you can use and refer back to as you see fit. And there may be some sessions that just aren't pertinent to you. Everywhere you go, there's education that doesn't really resound, or it's like, that's not really what I need to do. but start to look and find those sessions that do impact you, or maybe they fulfill some of the gaps that you have or learnings that you need to see. And I just want to call one thing out, talking about, we get asked all the time, what are the metrics? We talk about, if it's not participation, what are the metrics? There are so many, and each organization does it differently depending upon how sophisticated those metrics are coming in. But we know, and Abbie, you alluded to this a little bit, when the culture is right, employee satisfaction is up there, especially looking at, if you're a large organization, employee satisfaction and morale with your engagement professionals, right? They will have a different answer to those employment satisfaction questions, and you can gauge your program based upon their answers. The other thing is, if you look at voluntary versus involuntary move outs, why are people leaving? If you look at why people leave in the first 90 days, usually there was a miss, or they were communicating something that did not come to fruition when they were there. The other thing is, you can look at resident referrals. We see this all the time. Go through, look at that sales CRM. How many people are moving in because of word of mouth or resident referrals? If your culture is right, that will go there. You can look at turnover rate of employees, right? You can look at, so there's so many operating metrics you can look at. You can look at budget. Ideally, your budget is it's neutral every month. This is not a place you want to save money. Spend the money, right? Because you will lose it the next year. And those are just a few, but an organization has to pick out, what are those things that are already there that they can tap into. If not, it becomes an arduous task to figure out, okay, what's going to tell this story for us? But we know some of these things tell the story. You can link the stay is one, but that gets a little hairy too. But layer those up against each other and then see how it falls, and which ones are trending up and which ones are down, and they're there.
I want to ask you both, because we're going to plan on talking about having this discussion just about every month. And I want to ask you, for those engaged life directors, for those executive directors that are starting to plant the seeds about this conference, where can they go to share an idea with you if they have one? Where's the best place for someone to find you online?
Either LinkedIn. You can send us a message either on the LE3 page or either of our individual pages. Sarah and I share all the time who we get messages from and connect with on LinkedIn. That's probably best. And then if you go to our LinkedIn pages, our email addresses are on there. We have our actual work email addresses on LinkedIn, y'all. I laugh when I go on LinkedIn. I'm like, I don't want somebody's Gmail address. Come on now. So direct messages is usually where people communicate. We do have a Facebook group called A New Day and Activities. We don't love the term activities, but we know it's still here to stay for a while. And that's another avenue to communicate with us as well around ideas, needs, suggestions. We would love to hear from people out in our space on what do they need most.
Yeah. And if you have something that you've done great, share it with us. If you want to present, our whole thing is we want to we want people, we want fresh faces, new voices to have this platform to speak. And there's an advisory board that you'll be hearing about, and invites and stuff. And it's not we're going to just select people, right? If you have a passion and interest, and this is something that kind of keeps you up at night, please come find us. We will find places to plug you in and bring you along.
Awesome. Great. I'm looking forward to it. I've always benefited tremendously from attending, and I'm looking forward to seeing how this evolves this year for our 2023 Evolve Conference. So, Sara, Kelly, thank you so much for joining me today. And it's an honor, and so many people's lives are improved and touched by the impact that you're having across the board. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
And thank you to our viewers, and for those who participated today in the show. We always appreciate that. We're going to be sending this out, and so if you missed any of it, you can go back and watch it. And we're very thankful that you're here with us every Tuesday. And with that, we're going to go ahead and say goodbye.
Bye.